Hey everybody, my name's Ed. Okay, I've done a couple of videos before where I've sort of talked about race or ethnicity in comics. I thought it might be interesting to do another one. For this one, we're not going to get super heavy. We'll just kind of look at a few comics where the main character is minority led, or race or ethnicity is somehow dealt with within the main cast or whatever. We're not going to get too heavy, deep and political with this video, but like I said, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of look at the topic again. So we're just going to jump right into it. Okay, so the Blue Beetle. So the premise of the comic is Jaime Reyes. He's a high school student. He gets a hold of this magic scarab that gives him these superpowers. He's a teenager. He goes to school. He deals with his friends. He deals with his family. There's interesting supervillains in and out. And other characters guest star in the comic. And it's kind of that sort of lighthearted, sort of teen superhero comic. It very much fits that archetype. Spider-Man, Static Shock. These days, you have the new Ms. Marvel, that type of thing. So it's pretty much in that vein. Obviously, the character is Hispanic, and his background is part of the character and part of the story, but it's not the only part. It's just one part of many parts. I do like the fact that they do draw him to look like a brown-skinned, young Hispanic male. Like I said, his family figures into the story as well. His mom, his dad. I like his interactions with his friends. They also have the Silver Age Blue Beetle, who's a upper class white guy, Ted Cord, even though they don't really play up the whole billionaire part that much. But he's a rich guy who has all these inventions and things like that, kind of playing the mentor part. Although, again, he's not the only mentor. Jaime's dad and mom figure into it as well. And there's also references to the Golden Age Blue Beetle as well. Dan Garrett, right? Yeah. I think it's fun, it's light, it's breezy. Like I said, his ethnicity is a part of the character, not the only part of the character. Sometimes it comes up, sometimes it doesn't come up. You're aware of it, though you're not. I don't want to say overpowered. That's not quite the right word I want to use. But they avoid the obvious stereotypes. It's not a case of where he's just the Latino guy and you know it because he's dropping random Spanish words every other sentence. And if some random Spanish word does does appear, it doesn't feel, like I said, it doesn't feel tacky, you know what I mean? It feels naturalistic or whatever. Say personally, I did end up dropping the comic, not because I thought it was bad, but just I thought plot-wise it was just spinning its wheels a little bit too much and not going forward in a compelling way for me. You had all these characters, and I like that. I generally like comic books that have a lot of different things going on and lots of characters and stuff like that. But I also like each little story arc to have a beginning, middle, end, and build to something exciting. And then, okay, now we're on to the next story arc. This was just a little bit too middling and sort of, okay, here's some bad guys, and now here's some other bad guys, and here's somebody behind the scene pulling strings, and here's Dr. Fate, and they're somehow connected, and they just weren't getting to the point quick enough for me. But like I said, as far as handling the characters, background and ethnicity, I believe they did a pretty good job. I think the character may have been created by Keith Giffen. I'm not 100% sure on that. I do know he was writing the Rebirth title. So yeah. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so next we have Noble, which is a black superhero comic published by indie publisher Lions Forge. The first arc is mostly written by Brandon Thomas with art by Roger Robinson. And basically, the premise is we have the main character here who was, I guess, like a special forces soldier. He went on some mission, things went wrong, and some scientists got a hold of him, started running experiments on him, and now he has superpowers. He's not 100% certain who he is and what he's supposed to be doing. Um, he's instinctively running around trying to save people. Meanwhile, the bad guys, or say the government guys who may or may not be corrupt guys, are trying to get him back under control. There's several sort of shady bad guys out there as well. And meanwhile, his wife has found out that her husband is still alive, so she's using her uh, espionage contacts and whatnot to try to find him to, get back in, bring him back home or whatever. And it's, for the most part, it's pretty much an interesting story. They're kind of taking their time about telling their story. They're not really rushing the origin story or anything like that. It's really being parsed out over several issues. Though I wouldn't say it's too decompressed. I think each issue in and of itself is kind of a satisfying read. But like I said, they're stretching it out. It looks like they're playing a long game with this particular comic. One thing I want to say, it's really interesting because the comic is what a lot of, I'll say a fair number of black minority characters are always asking about at Marvel and DC. Like, you have certain characters there, but why is it that so many minority characters are kind of like these street level characters and things like that? Why is it that the Falcon or Black Lightning or Luke Cage or whatever? I think Luke Cage is a special case, but we'll talk about that some other video. Why are these minority characters always these kind of street level characters? They're there to handle drugs and gangs and things like that, while you have, Superman or Green Lantern or Iron Man fighting Skrulls and whatnot. Why can't we have, this, why can't we have a black character who's, undisputedly an alpha male character, a powerhouse, and have them let loose and have them take on big threats and things like that. So in this comic, you actually do have the main character, leaping in the air for miles, throwing tanks around, wiping out terrorists and things like that. He's not the guy who's standing around, hey kids, stay away from those gangs, at least as of yet or whatever. What do I want to say about that? Well, not to make a big deal of it. You do have characters like, the Black Panther and things like that, who are larger than life characters and whatnot. Maybe we'll save that for another video. But like I said, this is more, like I said, alpha male type character who is a powerhouse, and unquestionably a powerhouse, unapologetically a powerhouse, and kicking ass and taking names. And like I said, you have the whole sort of drama going on too, with his memory, with his wife trying to find him and all that sort of thing. So yeah, a pretty interesting read so far. Okay, so next we have Loose Ends, a 4-issue Southern crime romance, which pretty much describes it pretty much in a nutshell. It's written by Jason Latour and art by Chris Brunner, and it's basically at the core of the story, you kind of have this interracial romance. While ooh, excuse me, while it's never really made a super big deal of, a lot of the kind of racial aspects of the stories are there. They're just obvious for anyone to see. Like I said, you've got an interracial romance here. It's about this young man who leaves town, comes back, reacquaints himself with a lot of his former associates, and he gets embroiled in this whole sort of thing. There are these drug deals going on, these double crosses. There's all these flashbacks to either Afghanistan or Iraq. I can't remember right now. But it's just lots of crazy stuff going on. Like I said, at the core of it is this romance between this white man and this black woman, and how they're all caught up in everything and are trying to stay one step ahead of all the other bad guys and whatnot. Really interesting, crazy art. I really did. I enjoyed it. It might not be everybody else's cup of tea, but I dug it for the most part. It's exaggerated. I don't know if I want to use the word cartoony, but very stylistic, if that makes any sense. I think the problem I had with the comic, I think a couple of characters kind of approached um, they came close. A couple of characters came close to being kind of caricatures of Southern whites and blacks. I don't think it was offensively so. My biggest problem with the comic is really that it's a 4-issue miniseries, and I think it should have been 6. I think there was so much plot, and it was so dense, and so many things were going on. It was kind of hard to figure out, exactly what was happening when at sometimes. And I think maybe if they had 2 more issues, they could have let the story breathe a little bit more. If it was just everything was just this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, flashback, flashback, this happens, flashback, this happens, and like I said, you don't always catch all the more subtle things that I think they were probably trying to go for. So yeah, I think if you have more room to kind of develop certain scenes and pace it out a little bit better, I think the story could have been a little bit more enjoyable. But again, really interesting story. Not bad, not terrible, but it had its flaws pacing wise, I think. Okay, Deathstroke. All right, so basically, Deathstroke is about the adventures of this amoral bounty hunter, assassin, hitman type character. The main character is a middle-aged white man, but the reason I'm including this in this video is, when you think about it, it's actually one of the more diverse supporting casts in comics right now. Basically, it's his family and various associates, but part of the cast is one of his sons. His one son is bisexual. Uh, his daughter is half Asian. Right now, the current storyline includes new Power Girl, who is African American, as well as New 52 Wally West, who's also African American. And of course, or I shouldn't say of course, but a lot of his different adventures and things take him around the world, meeting various groups of people and whatnot. There's a whole thing where he's dealing with African dictators over here. There's a weird subplot where he actually hired a family to pretend to be related to his daughter's family on her Asian side, so that she could have someone to relate to. There was an interesting story that actually did touch on the sort of gun violence and gang problems that are taking place here in Chicago. So very, very interesting comic. I actually think it's one of the better comics being put out by DC right now. Also a very interesting thing, It's written by Christopher Priest. Christopher Priest was also known as Jim Owsley at one point, but he's done lots of work for Marvel and DC back in the 80s and early 90s. He actually left comics for a while because after he kind of revitalized Black Panther, after that it seemed like he felt that the only jobs that the big two were offering him were, excuse me, black and minority characters. So here's a guy that's written Spider-Man, Wolverine, done one-shots for Justice League and Batman, written Captain America, written Deadpool, and he felt that they were trying to typecast him as, the black guy who does the black characters or whatever. And I guess he just took a walk from comics for a while. But yeah, yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up, because I think it's interesting as far as him as a creator, and then wanting not to just do, okay, I'm the black guy, give me the black character. Can I write a white character? He writes a white character, but it isn't just about this white character. It's lots of interesting things having to do with race and class and ethnicity. Even within this comic book here, starring, like I said, the middle class, middle aged white guy, and actually I really like the way Christopher Reeves writes this character and all the supporting cast as well. They're all written mostly as smart people, clever people, and because of the nature of the character and all of his associates, everybody is trying to figure out what the other person is doing. Everybody knows someone's up to something duplicitous or whatever, and a lot of it has to do with various characters, the more pure characters as well as the more evil characters, trying to all stay one step ahead of each other. Like I said, really solid art as well. For the most part, interesting pacing. Lots of interesting storytelling and jump cutting. Not too confusing, although sometimes you might have to read an issue twice or go back to a previous scene to figure out what's been going on. But yeah, like I said, now the art here is by Carlos, I can't say that name, and Jason. But yeah, like I said, it's actually one of the better comics being put out by DC these days. I don't know how well it's doing in sales, but it'll be a shame if they have to cancel it for some reason. Okay, oh wait, I should show you. Let's see if I can find something good with his daughter in it. Oh, here's his daughter Rose. Oh, here she is with her boyfriend. Let's see if I can find a really good staging of action scenes too. I should probably point out. Let me see if I can find a good picture of Joey. Oh, there he is. Oh no. He ends up taking this guy's suit, so anyway, that's it. I can't show you all the issues I have, but yeah, like I said, really interesting story with kind of offbeat lead character, but a very diverse supporting cast. Okay, so that's it. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Next one I do, I'll try to kind of mix it up a little bit more. Maybe we'll get a little bit more in depth about what things sort of mean, maybe in a social context, or maybe I'll try to come up with something that's not just superhero comics or whatever. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to break out a beer here. Polish hops, because why the fuck not? Cheers. Thank you for watching, and everybody have a great day.